So I would now like to introduce Owen Jarvis, who's CEO of UK Co-Housing Network. And so he's an absolute expert in the field. And without further ado, let me pass over to you, Owen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll just take a moment to set up the slides for you. Hopefully everybody can see that, if that works. Yeah, so absolutely delighted to be here today, and thank you very much, Janet, Harriet, and the u3a team for inviting me here. Yeah, we're going to have a sort of nice leisurely discussion really about rediscovering community and co-housing as a path to healthy aging. As Janet said, I'm Owen Jarvis, Chief Exec at UK Co-Housing Network. And yeah, we're a non-profit organisation run by our members. And yeah, we've got a whole hour together, but we're hoping to give a decent chunk of time at the end for questions. So as Janet said, if you have questions along the way, please do put them in the chat. We'd love to see those. So just a quick overview of what we will discuss. I'm going to have a quick run through some of the challenges that co-housing tries to address, and then go into co-housing, what it is, how it works. And we've got a couple of case studies, some short films, which we're hoping is going to work really smoothly so that we can dig in and have a look around a couple of co-housing schemes. Then I'm going to have a chat about the benefits of co-housing. And we've got a short section at the end, really, just a few pointers for those of you who are curious about co-housing to ask, is co-housing for you? And what are the sort of things you might want to think about before we go on to questions and answers. So we will show this slide again at the end. But if you are curious today, there are 4 easy steps to pursuing your interest in co-housing further. The first one is that we're going to have an online course in early 2025 around living in co-housing, an introduction. So you can put an expression of interest there. It's not a commitment at this stage. And you can also join the UK Co-Housing Network. It's free to sign up to our newsletter. And it's also free to join our national waiting list. So if you are interested, if you get your name down, we'll alert you to any opportunities to move into co-housing as they occur. So, housing for healthy aging, the challenges that co-housing seeks to address. So the first question really is around, as many of you have seen news reports about housing and loneliness, neighbourliness and belonging. The research from Age UK found that half of adults in the UK report feelings of loneliness, and 1.4 million older people in the UK are often lonely. So part of our question in co-housing is, can housing actually be a solution in itself to that? And we'll discuss that a little bit more. So another question we wonder is how we can ensure there's more nature connection in housing. And so 1 in 8 households have no access to private or shared gardens. And during COVID, as many of us discovered, having access to the park or a garden is really important for our health and well-being. So that's another question that we're really interested in asking ourselves. So are new homes attractive to move into? And I suppose one of the things that's quite shocking is, particularly the government having targets of 1.5 million new homes, is that actually in the UK or in England, Place Alliance surveyed 142 housing developments across England. 3/4 of those audited were seen as mediocre or poor. So there's a lot more we can do in terms of quality of house building, and co-housing takes the quality of house building very seriously, as we'll see. So I wanted to introduce you to Charles Durrett. For those of you who don't know him, he's an American architect who's essentially brought co-housing to the English-speaking world from Denmark. And one of his key questions is your neighborhood working socially? And for him, if housing doesn't work socially, what's the point? And he really emphasizes high functioning neighborhoods as being important, a strong sense of belonging, identity and accountability, knowing the names of your neighbors, care about each other, support in times of need. So what is co-housing and how does it work? So these images on the right are of Marmalade Lane in Cambridge, and we'll explore Marmalade Lane in a little while as part of our case study. Co-housing is sociable, collaborative community where people know their neighbours and through collaboration can live more sustainably. And we often describe co-housing as being about an intentional community. And by that, we mean that people actively choose to move into co-housing and want to participate and help create a sense of community. So it's something you actively choose to do. Importantly, it blends private homes with shared spaces. It's usually a neighbourhood of 20 to 40 homes. It's designed for social interaction, which we'll come on to. And it's co-designed with future residents, which means that residents are involved in the early stages of planning and designing what goes where and how things are going to work. And it's then collectively managed by its residents. So it also, we talk about the value of being a good neighbour to the surrounding neighbourhood. So that's a really important point, that these aren't, if you like, gated communities in any way. And there are many different types of co-housing. There's not, each one is very different, as we will see shortly. So as we said, key co-housing values, residents are involved in the design and ongoing management, and they're designed to be sociable and connected. In some ways, the success of a co-housing scheme is its sense of community and connection. And as we said, future residents are involved in the design, and you can see some images here on the left of architects working with residents to help them prioritize what they want to see in their future neighborhood. And Charles Durrett's co-design process in America goes through a 12-week period. And it starts with helping to create a vision. You know, what do you want to see in a neighborhood? How do you want to live? And it works through a number of stages in terms of designing the sites, the common house, private spaces, and then you have a final brief for the architect. So as we said, although it's about community living, privacy is absolutely essential to making the community work successfully. So what we often see are not only a private home, but we also see some smaller spaces where you might meet one or two people or your neighbours or a small group. And that's really important. So you're not visible and fully part of the community at all times. Privacy is really important. And the other thing that you often see with co-housing groups is common houses. This is absolutely an essential part of the design, and it's seen as an extension of your home. So it's something that you have a right to use. And this is where the community gather for meals, meetings, celebrations, social activities. Maybe there'll be some form of creche or childcare. So this is a really important part of the community. And as our colleagues in the Netherlands presented at our recent conference in the summer, there's a real emphasis on creating spontaneous meeting points. So you really think about, where are you likely to bump into your neighbours? How can you meet people without it really being a big deal? It's not an effort. You bump into your neighbours. You feel comfortable talking and meeting with people as you go about your day-to-day business, and that's really, really important. And this is a illustration that we've often used on our website and so on. It just gives you an overview of some of the facilities that you might find, the communal facilities, so the common house, shared energy, and you'll see that there's a larger shared garden, allotment, food growing. The cars and the carpool are pushed to the edge of the site. And it just gives you an indication of the sort of benefits you might get from living in a co-housing scheme in terms of facilities. And this is a spot the difference competition, if you like. On the left, you have, I'll spoil it by giving you the answer. On the left, you have a conventional development, and on the right, you have a co-housing development. And you'll be able to see the marked differences in the design. In the conventional development, you see the emphasis on the car use, on concrete. You can see a lot of small gardens, and obviously on the right, you can see the co-housing scheme, a very large shared garden. You can see that there's a car-free street where kids can play out, and you get a real sense of the marked difference between the two. So it's also important to say that the designs can look differently. This is a schema from our colleagues at Archeo, who've designed a number of co-housing schemes, and they identified a number of different designs from co-housing schemes in Europe. And you can see that co-housing can show up in a number of ways. It might be part of an apartment block, could be part of a terrace, it might be part of a couple of apartment blocks on the ground floor. So I think it's just important to note that co-housing is very popular in Europe, in Scandinavia, Germany, and increasingly in Belgium, but also that it can come in different shapes and sizes. So case studies, just two case studies, slightly different to explore together. The first one is New Ground in Barnet, and some of you may have come across this development. It's called formerly known as the Older Women's Co-housing Project. And we've got a short film by the architects which covers it off nicely. It's now celebrating its 6th year. And as you can see, there's 25 flats, 8 are social housing, and it's home to a diverse group of 26 women, aged 58 to 94, and they manage all aspects of the scheme together. And it was set up in partnership with a housing association. So I am going to just briefly stop sharing the screen and then get the film on, and let's just have a quick go at this. Film. And let's have a look.
Cohousing is a way of living as an individual with your own self-contained accommodation as part of a group. Well, I've been working with Shirley and the others since 1998. I had been an academic. I was doing research in the Netherlands on senior co-housing. The group started from a workshop that I organized in London. We talked about loneliness in old age, the shortage of social care, and having no power of themselves, no dignity. And from that day, a group of women who knew each other went off to a pub all excited and said, let's do it. And that was the beginning of Ouch. It was possible. We were going to overcome all these people who said you can't do it.
The determination that Shirley has had has been amazing. She's been involved in a lot more sites that fell through for one reason or another. And she'd just say, no, right, here we go, we start again.
What we're looking at here is the first senior co-housing community in the whole of the UK. And as you can see, it's a really rather beautiful building, but the group that's living in it helped design, in fact. What I remember is what used to be here before, which was classrooms, school hall, a very barren asphalt playground. PT brought the group in to share the design. That was such an amazing shot in the arm for the whole group. It gave them a huge sense of ownership.
We were in the first meeting with PCEA, weren't we? Where they had a blank sheet. And they said, what do you want? That was the historic sentence, what do you want? And we started from there.
They said, we're the ones holding the pencils, not you, but we want your ideas. So good that you feel part of a whole here. I mean, the way it's shaped, you feel part of the whole. Look out your balcony in the morning and then see somebody else having their breakfast over on another one.
year. There's been no major bust-ups. It's been great.
It was agreed that it would be open to people from 50 upwards, with no upper age limit. And what we're going to try and do is try and keep an age balance.
Well, some of us own and some of us rent.
We're all equal members, and that's what we wanted to do. It's a diverse community, not only of races, but also of class, of education, and income, you know. So I'm really thrilled about that.
And we have joint cooking, done a bit of that. It's quite intriguing how people decide who's in charge and who will just peel the spuds and do as they're told.
So we have a sort of rota you can sign up to for cleaning, and though I hate housework, it's quite fun when you're doing it with 2 or 3 other people, you know.
Okay, so we will include the link to the film. That gives you just a few minutes of the film. But you can follow it in further detail at home. It's a really nice film. Hopefully enjoyed having a chance to meet some of the residents and the founders. So I'm just going to switch over. And so bear with us. So the other case study that we wanted to have a look at is Marmalade Lane, which we've shown you some pictures of already. It's in Cambridge and it's a little bit different. It's the first example of a scheme that was developed in partnership between the City Council and a developer called Town. And there was a group that was interested in co-housing in the area, but they were, if you like, recruited slightly to join this opportunity. It's 42 homes, all market sale, some leasehold and freehold, and it's multi-generational. And it has the same sort of features that we're looking at there in terms of car-free, shared laundries, and it's run by the residents. So I'm just going to come out of this and just show you a couple of minutes film. It's a good opportunity basically for us to nose around a co-housing neighbourhood without disturbing anybody. But you do get to hear from some of the residents as well as having a look at how it's laid out. So it gives us a nice view. Okay. Check with Harriet, but it's come out okay.
I can see it, Owen, but I can't hear anything yet, and it's not on full screen.
Okay.
I think the best way of describing the one that I like best is an intentional community. So there's a group of people that got together to build their own houses. It's a little bit of town that people have set out to build for themselves. As new parents, we didn't really know what we were going to expect. So if you go online and Google what it's like to be a first-time parent, you end up finding out that you can often get socially isolated.
None of our friends already had children, so we were worried about the isolation, particularly me on maternity leave on my own with, well, we didn't know it was going to be twins, but
we don't necessarily need to be surrounded by the best friends in the entire world, but the neighborliness factor, sort of sign of community, the fact that somebody can be on your doorstep within 2 seconds if you're having a real problem is really important.
just having somewhere around the corner to go to have a cup of tea in the middle of the day.
You can look at community living in many ways, and you could dress it up and pretend that it's terribly modern and terribly new. But on the other hand, it's extremely old-fashioned, a bit like village life, to the extent that you're aware of who your neighbours are, you know who your neighbours are. But unlike a village where you maybe just have been born there. Here, at least, all the families have chosen to move into this development.
Back in 2013, my husband and I saw an article which spoke about how older people benefit from community, both mentally and physically. And we thought that when we retire, we don't want to be sat there twitching the net curtains and wondering what was going on in the outside world. We wanted to be actively engaged. But trying to find somewhere that would build before we died was the challenge.
And for me, co-housing is about, it's both about wanting to live in a more sort of old-fashioned community. I've lived in a village before, a small village, and I really liked it, and I wanted that sort of more neighbourly feeling. But also, I think community is kind of for the future. It's something about, I think it supports you to live in a more sustainable way.
Okay. So bear with me again. I'm just going to switch back to the slides. So hopefully you could see some of the design principles that we were talking about. So what are the benefits of co-housing? We've had a number of academic research studies out already. There's a report last year looking at how informal care is provided for people in at different ages, but also particularly an older age. And that it shows that co-housing is good for healthy aging. And they also look at other forms of intentional community as well, which is very interesting. And we can provide you with a link to that report. Also that co-housing reduces loneliness, which was a topic we were talking about earlier. And co-housing was part of a LSE report looking at community-led housing in general, but co-housing shows up very strongly as part of those results. And that co-housing is green, it's a low carbon way of living, and that's partly through the physical design, but also the way that people share facilities and support each other in living a low carbon lifestyle. So this is another report that was recently out from Marmalade Lane looking at 5 years on. I'm just going to take a few slides from their report. Again, we'll provide the link to the report, but it's quite a nice, it's a very colourful, quite a nice report bringing some of these themes to life. One of the things they were looking at is neighbourliness and belonging. And as you can see here, 98% of residents said that they regularly stop and talk to people in the neighbourhood. They produce over 100 meals every month, which probably constitutes meals once or twice a week altogether as a community. And somebody quoting there that having a social life on their doorstep is one of the things that they really value. So another theme was health and well-being. And 78% of residents have regularly participated in physical activity at least once a week. And you'll remember that there is a big shared garden, some food growing, and they also have a gym actually at Marmalade Lane. So plenty of opportunities there. And convenience, I thought this was quite interesting, that there's a shared laundry rather than having a washing machine each. There's a shared laundry and 90% of residents use the shared laundry. And 74% of residents use the community shop. They actually have a space within which has been left over in the development. There's a sort of story for that. Originally, it was meant to be for a canoe store, and that didn't end up being used for that. So it ended up being used as a community shop. So they're able to bulk buy food and get things at cost price rather than shop price. And the final one was childhood, which I thought was quite interesting, that co-housing schemes are excellent places for kids to grow up. Lots of shared spaces, lots of other kids, no cars in the streets in front of the homes. And as they say here, can play hide and seek in the bike sheds and in the trees in the site. So I suppose the question is there a current pipeline of co-housing schemes? There are 25 co-housing schemes in the country, of which 11 are new build. And so that's about 330 homes in the new build, and about the same again in schemes where they've converted mansions and farms and so on. So it's a niche within the housing sector, but there are some new developments coming through. There's a North Stowe is a new town development outside Cambridgeshire, and there's going to be two co-housing schemes, quite likely to be two co-housing schemes there. So they will be looking for new members. And you can see an architect's drawing of the type, what the site will look like. And that gives you a bit more detail. North Stowe is an interesting study because it was seen as a failure as a new town because it didn't have enough community facilities in its first few years. And so co-housing is part of a really strong attempt by Homes England to inject a really strong sense of community in the next few phases. And there you can see Town is the specialist developer that will be overseeing that. And they're currently in the process of recruiting to form groups for that project. And this is Angel Yard in Norwich. Again, it's a specialist developer Town and an architect, Archeo, behind it in terms of the design. You can see some details there. It's 34 properties and it's just got planning permission this week. I think I'll have to check, but I think they may have some vacancies still. And you've got some breakdown. There are 6 houses and 28 apartments. And this is Still Green, co-housing people for people aged over 50. And again, most of the schemes coming through at the moment are coming through this specialist developer Town. 29 homes, 4 social rental shared facilities, and that's in the Milton Keynes area. And you get some images there of some of the designs. And this is one that's been one of our board members, Julian Brooks, is leading on this. This is a Bridge Farm co-housing in Somerset. It's a rural development. And it's they're working with a farmer who's selling them the land and some of the buildings. They're redeveloping some of the buildings, building some new properties as well, and retaining the use for kitchen and market gardens of the land, as well as having workspaces for the local community. They're in the early stages, I think it's fair to say. They're moving towards planning permission, but they are open and looking for potential new members. I don't know whether we'll do a poll on this one, actually, Harriet. I think you've contributed massively to the polls so far. So, and given the results of the last poll, I'm probably going to take liberty of assuming the answer to this question is yes. So we will move on to this section, which is really just a chance to think about co-housing for you. You know, is it going to be for you? We've covered some of the benefits. There are lots of benefits to living in community, and we've covered many of these, from social life, health and well-being, carbon footprint. Some people describe co-housing as an opportunity to scale your life up, in the sense that rather than living in your own property, you suddenly have access to all these other facilities and resources and people with skills that they want to share. And you have a voice in your local area and in your community. And particularly with the new builds, there's a really strong focus on the quality of the building and lots of informal support. However, co-housing also has a very low turnover because people do like living in co-housing. So there is a relative scarcity of opportunities at the moment. And we certainly encourage everybody to, feel free to, if you want to see more co-housing, to write into your MP and ask them to write to the Housing Minister. UK Co-Housing Network is with other partners in the community-led housing sector. We are in discussions with the Housing Minister about ensuring co-housing and community-led housing is part of the long-term strategy for the government, which is really good. But they do see, if they get a letter from your MP, it does, and it gets to the minister, they do take account of it. And just this final slide really about some of the requirements. Living in community is quite different in many ways to just having your own family home. It does involve participation. You kind of create the community and you're part of creating that community. There's quite a lot of give and take. It it works. Just to say, it works for introverts as well as extroverts. You don't have to be very extrovert to really enjoy being part of the community. There's plenty of opportunity. It works for everybody on their own terms. But there are things that you might want to keep in mind in terms of over time developing some community living skills, some of which most are around communication, having things like empathy, speaking at meetings, being part of teams, and compromising, and being part of developing plans. So there are some skills to learn, but everybody's in the same boat. Everybody is, learning those skills and learning to be part of a community. So yeah, it's definitely something to explore.
Well, Owen, I think we're going to draw it to a close now. Jude Tisdale, who's from Newground, who's with us, it says there's an excellent book, Practical Guide to Co-Housing, available via Diggers and Dreamers or the UK Co-Housing Network. And
Thanks,
quite a
Jude.
few people are saying thanks for an interesting talk, Owen. So do you want to just, as Harriet said at the beginning, everybody will receive we're asking you to give us your feedback, and some of the information that Owen has referred to will be included on that form. So you'll get the links that Owen referred to. So do you want to say a last word, Owen, before I sum up? Say thank you.
Well, exactly. Well, thank you to Janet and Harriet and Misha for facilitating the session. Thank you to all of you for coming and participating in the poll. It was hugely encouraging to see how many people were really interested in co-housing. And yeah, I would just encourage people, if you're interested, just take those easy first steps forward. It doesn't overcommit you to anything, but might be get you on the path to finding a place in a co-housing scheme in the future.
And I very much hope that more and more interest will lead to more and more opportunities and a wider range, because several people have said there's not much for rental, and obviously
Exactly.
good too. So thank you very much, Owen.